amazing technology that has brought us together has started a recording. And to just think of this is a chance that we are in this space and place and have the privilege to be together, to learn and grow as researchers, as people, as those caring about the world and sustainable futures. So if you can take another breath in, hold it, and out. And when you're ready, feel free to open your eyes. Thank you for all of you who were joining in or just holding that space. So contemplative inquiry, then, this is both a research and a pedagogical practice. Valerie Janicek, for instance, talks about it as a way of becoming more aware and open. And contemplative inquiry, if we had, and perhaps in March in person at the conference, if you're coming out, I will invite you to get a pen or pencil and to write and to have what can be called a brain dump, everything that's on your mind, just to work to let it come out. And so like the prayer where we started, where Natasha, right, you started us with this moment of just coming and grounding ourselves, that we get to have the privilege of being in this space and that we have access to internet, we have access to technology, we have this knowledge to be together. And then we have Kakali Bhattacharya talks about contemplative inquiry. Inquiry is a way of deepening our attention and learning. And then I talk about this, and then also with Nettie Boivin, about recognizing the potential of critical self-reflection. So critical self-reflection is being a type of contemplative inquiry, and this is a way to build more equitable and inclusive practices and approaches. Okay, so that's the contemplative inquiry. Now I'll return. So hi again. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be out here today. I'm Anna Cohen Miller, and I'm an author and researcher and full professor, and I'm calling in from Spain, and I work at Nord University in Norway at the Center for Professional Development and Learning. I want to thank Pavel Zubkov and Arceli Rosario for all their leadership with AQRA and making this possible and the invitation to come out today, and then for the future conference that will be coming up in March. Thank you to Natasha, thank you to David as well, and to all of you who are part of this and being here. And so it has been many years that I've been connected with AQRA, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. First connecting when I was in Kazakhstan, and then being able to continue that relationship over the years. So as we move forward, I'm going to be asking some different questions of y'all, and you can think about these, you can write them down if you would like, right? You're on a device, you could type them, or just kind of process them or come back to them perhaps in the future. So for instance, where do you see injustice in the world? Do you see it regionally? Do you see it in your community? I'm just going to take a moment. Maybe you can identify something that you're particularly connected to or something that is meaningful to you. Then have you ever wondered if through your own research you could make the world a better place? And as I say that, it's really interesting because I find for myself, so when something really touches me, the hairs on my arm stand up. And this is one of those things that I can feel that the potential and the clarity that I know this is true. And I've seen it and I've heard it from people from across the world, including in the stories in this book, and then also just in informal conversations. And in my experiences, it is possible to make the world a better place through your work and who you are. Have you ever wanted to know more about how others conduct their research? So this is where the idea of the transformative moments in qualitative research, that stories of learning and of transformation come in. But through this book, we get a chance then to learn from one another's experiences and discern practical approaches to apply to our own life and research. there's an opportunity to deeply consider how the lessons learned, the hiccups faced, right? These stumbling blocks, and even what some would refer to as, quote, failures, can become those life-changing moments. And we can see that they are transferable to our own practice. So I wanted to give you a sense of what's included in the book, right? That they're the general topics that we come from and start with these ideas of knowing ourselves and stories from Jennifer Wolgamith, Sarah C. Johnson, and Oliver Ito, and then moving into creating a foundation and qualitative inquiry. What does that look like? From James De Leon, Salvo, and Jasmine Ulmer, Hong Tran, and Aurelia Davila da Silva, then into seeking a critical perspective, right? Where is it that we're looking to go? How can we bring in this critical, meaning like recognizing differences in power, right? Well, recognizing that it is different depending on where you live in the world and what resources you have and what access you have and how you're treated based on how you look and how we think of ourselves. With stories from Patti Lather, Tanika Abma, Amin Zulika Casus, and Zira Evangelista, and recognizing these failures, right? The quote, failures and potential risks in the research from Maria Grazia Imperiali, Chamika Agnesi Joe, and Justin DeFelice. And for these stories to be there and then talk about a vulnerability, that it takes a lot of vulnerability to share who we are and when things don't go perfectly, right? Like it's very easy to put on social media, oh, I did this successful thing. But to say, I tried this thing and it didn't work very well, or it totally didn't work. And that happens in research. And that's where these stories now, I'll share some snippets of those with you. So vulnerability in research can be recognized as a willingness and or act of sharing about one's limitations in research and or practice for the purposes of growth and learning for the individual or greater good. So the book continues into noticing the potential for change, right? So with this vulnerability, where's the potential for change? Maybe you've heard the names Donna Mertens, and Nadia Drescher-Lambertus is here with us today. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of this workshop with her. This colloquia, Roxanne Hinken, learning from others. How can we learn from others? From Pingfei Zhao, from Anne Lu M. Hendricks, and Frances Akina Adanya, and Norma R.A. Ram. And then where can we create balance? Where can we find that? What are we seeking as we move forward? With Giovanna Facetta, with Newport Samuel, and Sally St. George, and Dan Wolf. And I'm going through and I'm saying people's names because I want to highlight who they are, right? That this isn't all about me. This is a chance. Yes, this is a book that I put together, but it is about other people's stories, and it's about the coming together and recognizing that we're a worldwide community. And in order to highlight the voices and to show that people value and are heard, their voices need to be there, their names need to be there. So building meaningful relationships and qualitative inquiry from Patricia Lethol and Pathalani Makulie, Norma Ram, Elizabeth Vicedo, and Eleanor Chapman, and Sumaya. So in Sumaya there, it's in quotes because it was not safe for her to include her real name and her real background, but she's still there. And then finally, in developing self-transformation with Megan Call Cummings, Leanne Beardsley, Andrea and Eniko Lipka, Christy Williams, and Gary Paget. So through these narratives, we're invited to reflect on our own experiences and perspectives and consider how we can apply the insights gained from the transformative stories to our own research. The stories vary in type and depth, but all have a common thread of a momentous, visceral moment, a recollection or experience provoking intense feeling, and often a change in research practice. So what does this look like, right? How did we see these momentous points? I talk about this as then a cycle of critical self-reflection. And, it could be this very beautiful, first this, then that, then that. But it's not just that, right? So the critical self-reflection as we become more aware and vulnerable Sometimes that immediately leads to transformation. Other times it goes back to a vulnerability. And there's this interconnected web. So transformative learning and research for ourselves, for research for more equitable and inclusive futures, having then the chance to then gently embrace our vulnerabilities. And I emphasize gently there, right? It's not easy to look at ourselves and to see where we might want to be better for ourselves or for others, engaging in meaningful interactions, working to dismantle oppressive systems, challenging dominant narratives, and fostering inclusive spaces where these voices, spaces, and places are valued and heard. So then what is critical self-reflection? We can think of then a definition that Nettie Boivin and I have in one of our earlier books of critical self-reflection in qualitative research, then emphasizes reflecting on our work to purposefully become better researchers. So a part of reflexivity. So these are, if you're already immersed in the world of qualitative research, some of these terminology may be familiar to you. And if not, then you get a chance to be able to further explore it. So the cycle of critical self-reflection, through a process of critical self-reflection, we can learn to be vulnerable as we become more aware of ourselves, seeing growth of insight and learning that could be shared with others for the benefit of research and practice, and ultimately to make the world a better place. And I use the word better here in multiple ways. And one thing that I mention, and we'll continue to emphasize, is that better is going to be different for everyone, right? That what's better for me, maybe it will focus on social justice. Maybe for other people, it will be environmental justice. Maybe it will be something completely different. And that's part of the critical self-reflection. What is important to you? Everyone who's a part of AQRA, everyone that I've ever talked to over these years cares about making the world better, cares about a community. But what is that better for you? So as researchers, then, this is then where it comes back to ourselves. Ourselves become part of our work. Our positionality matters. So I could ask myself, and you could ask yourself, right? Where am I from? Right? So when somebody says, oh, where are you from? Right? Maybe you're living in the same place where you grew up, but if you've moved somewhere else or your generations, where are you from? Right? And what does that mean to you? What is important to me? Who am I on a personal level? How do other people see me? What has informed my career, my life? Why am I doing the work, maybe research, teaching, community engagement, ministry that I'm doing? And these answers will change over time as well as we continue to change and grow. So our positionality then incorporates who we are, how we came to this point, and where we may go. So we could ask ourselves then, right? Why is knowing ourselves important to justice-centered qualitative research? How can I become more aware of myself to enhance my work, practice, and learning? And now share a bit about myself, right? I can say, okay, positionality on a professional level, right? Like this is a very kind of typical, this is where I've been, or these are some of the collaborations that I've made. And I continue to use this map and adding new points, which is fantastic. And I love to see those collaborations. And these are important for professional levels and also personal. Yet, if you just saw this, or let's see, I'll continue on, right? If you just see, okay, here are books, right? We're talking about transformative moments. Before that, I wrote an edited book with some folks who are here contributed chapters, whereas the lead editor for Leading Change in Gender and Diversity in Higher Education, from Margins to Mainstream. And then when I mentioned Nettie Boivin before, that's the salad bowl image, the questions in qualitative social justice research in multicultural contexts. And then coming up, I'm working on a book with Kelly Grace for Guilford called Justice-Centered Mixed Methods Research. Maybe you see some common threads here of the justice-centered, of social justice, equity, and inclusion. But again, if you only saw, right, so if you only saw the map and you only saw the books, you would have a sense of me and an idea of, okay, this is how I could collaborate perhaps professionally, but you wouldn't know deeper about me. So then bridging the professional and personal, Right here, I only have one picture of me and one of my kids. But so what I would say is that I'm a transformative arts-based researcher and mother scholar. That I would go ahead and I'd put in the mother. And my partner is here today, right? That I'm a part of something bigger, right? It's not just me. So the cycle of self-awareness through critical self-reflection, vulnerability, and transformation is how I've begun to understand why I came to my current interests, how to move forward with others. I've written about this topic before. In my first book, I explained that I'm Sephardic. I'm Spanish and Jewish, is what that means. And I identify as a cisgender woman who embodies historical memory and historic generational trauma of forced displacement and concern for ongoing oppression and violence. And my commitment and passion for empowering others and guiding researchers and practitioners to find a more just world emerge from this history. And so while that informs me, right? And seeing my children, seeing working with students, it I have then a sense of where I am and how I can then the privilege that I have as a woman, for instance, who passes as white, that I I aim to seek to continue to critically self-reflect, to work to be vulnerable enough to see what I don't know, right? That I don't know it all. So I come here and I'm sharing with you about this book, and yet it's not the pinnacle, it's not the end. And I had one mentor who it was fantastic. I love this point that she mentioned, that she said, I pointed to her as the expert in something. And she said, I don't like that word expert, right? Because it means that if you're an expert, then there's nothing else to learn. And so instead, I get to learn with y'all together. And I'm grateful for that. And so I merge together the arts and I merge together the ways that we can better understand and value and hear people. So, so then how can I become more aware of myself to enhance my work, practice, and learning? We can think about this, and I will show you then one particular way. Let's see. So one particular way being, here are some images from the book, The Power of Arts-Based Research to Evoke, Provoke, and Unsettle. We have an image from Sarah C. Johnson that she shared from Portsmouth, Ohio, of herself, and where she talks about her journey in her PhD. And we have an image from Alavir Pito, A Piercing on the Veil of Independence. And this I will go into further here. So integrating the arts and narrative. So Alavir says, my recollection brings me back towards the end of year 2019 and early 2020, when I was gathering data for my doctoral dissertation. I ventured onto a sensitive topic for my dissertation study, the topic of senior citizens and investment. Advised that such was a sensitive topic and may be difficult to pursue, I felt the need to capture an understanding of the phenomenon for those who were most vulnerable. And so in her narrative, then she continues on and she talks about how she was able to gain access, or how she negotiated these chances to talk to these senior citizens who had struggled and who had been scammed, and the vulnerability for them to be able, the shame of sharing about these experiences and the importance for bringing that to light. And so you can read more about her story if you'd like, or reach out to her to learn more. So transformative learning and research, and now I'll share some more stories in a bit. But so transformative learning and research, the experiences in the stories exemplify what is referred to in adult education as transformative or transformational learning. Transformative learning then, as Miriam and Baumgartner explain, is about change, dramatic, fundamental change in the way we see ourselves and the world in which we live. And so an image then here from Amin Kassus, Between the Globals, international students studying in a non-UK context using UK-based standards and protocols. So Amin and Zira Evangelista, they then both share about being these PhD students and doing research in Algeria and Philippines, respectively, and the struggles of how do they breach the different ways and different tools? So, for instance, Amin talks about in the UK how Zoom is the standard for doing research, or was at the time, and yet for participants in Algeria, their internet wasn't strong enough to be able to use Zoom, and instead, what was common was using Facebook and Facebook video, which, for the standards of the ethical guidelines, was not allowed in the UK. So what do you do? How do you hear the voice? How do you move forward? And so these are some of the narratives, right? And some of the challenges that we face. So if we think then about the book as a whole, if you're interested in the theory and the theoretical framing, I work to draw from contemplative inquiry and learning. So from Bhattacharya, from some of my work, from Valerie Janicek, from critical self-reflection. So as we draw from, I mentioned adult education. This is also from Mesereau, talks about that, centering voice and feminist research. Again, from my work, and then with Kelly Grace, from Patricia Levy, and from Harris, decolonial research and social justice research, Donna Mertens, and Linda Toohey Y. Smith. Also, Norma Rahm is an important addition there. Humanizing research from Pak and Ravitch, transformational learning from Cranton, Mesereau, and Taylor, Miriam and Baumgardner. So these are some of the theoretical framing and the context. If you're interested in the references, happy to send those on. And again, you could see them then in the book as well. So from Patty Lather, so I mentioned her name before. So she talks, and she included an image here of a South African street vendor sculpture of a woman. And she says, white woman goes to Africa and loses her voice. In 2001, I was one of 3 US academics invited to serve at the University of Durban, Westville in South Africa as a consultant in the development of research capacity for what was termed a historically disadvantaged university. Funding came from a US aid program, and it was clear that my background in critical and feminist qualitative work in education was the reason for the invitation. Then she continues on and said that this trip brought me face to face with the contradictions of white expertise and the necessary complicities and forms of dominance involved in addressing someone as a subaltern, someone, at a different level. This was particularly complicated in that many at the university, I discovered, had originally thought I was Black. In the words of someone who interviewed me, this was due to my dealing with issues that, quote, do not really concern a white woman. So she continues on. She talks about this struggle and how she navigated it and worked with others to both, she was invited there, right, to work and to provide then this expertise and insight, and yet she wasn't necessarily who they thought that she was. And she wanted to be able to recognize and that she isn't a part of the community. So how do we highlight who is a part of the community, yet being invited to offer our insight as well? And now from Nadia Drescher-Lambertus, who I'm so grateful, who is here with us today. Thank you so much for joining in. I don't know if you're able to unmute, Nadia. If you are, if you would like to.
Nadia, you can unmute yourself, Nadia.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
It's a bit loud here, so I don't know if it's a bit noisy in the cafe, but hi.
Hi. Thank you. Then you don't. Yeah, if it's too loud, you can go ahead and mute again. And are you okay with my reading your words then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so Nadia talks about body wisdom and ontological spurts in my scholarly becoming. And included here, you can see then a collage, a mixed media collage, Mucha Interno, Caribeña, Caribbean Inner Child, and the Art then by Nadia Drescher-Lambertus. So Nadia Lambertus says then our own lived experiences are related to the path of our research. I am talking about how our body is weaved into the world we move into as part of this world, and the bodily ontological generativity that is at the base of our scholarly work. The body teaches us precisely what we need to know. And then another excerpt from the section on body memory and decolonial processes. As a small girl growing up, Nadia explains, in a post-colonial reality of Aruba, where I was not allowed to express myself in my own mother language in the classroom, my whole education was in Dutch, and I became schooled in the Dutch language. My wise body kept score of the visceral logics of coloniality. Then later on in this segment, she says, I now experiment with arts-based methods as autoethnographic collaging colonial photos in national public archives to reverse the colonial gaze, and with embodied poetry in my Creole mother language, papiamento, to access that ontological, visceral space of liberation. These are my healing research creations as part of my own decolonial processes. Thank you, Nadia, for sharing with us. So we have then, I have two more excerpts then. So here we have a story of research in getting access to communities off limits. So from Maria Grazie Imperiale, Living Amongst Rubble. So in her work as a critical methodologist, she shares really heartbreaking struggles from her dissertation research. And so she talks about failure and research, not being able to get access, and what I learned from that. She says, I flew to Site 1 in order to negotiate access to the schools of an important institution, which she has kept private for the safety of all involved, where it provides education for Palestinian refugees. Having secured ethical approval and having keen contacts in the field, I therefore thought everything would go smoothly, but it was not to be the case. The first obstacle I encountered was in negotiating access to the refugee camp in which I wanted to conduct my research project. As my research diary records, however, this resulted in an unpleasant surprise. A small piece of paper was printed in front of me in less than a minute, while the same threatening colonel that interrogated me some days previously was posing again the very same questions he had already asked me. Why do you go here? How long are you staying? Where will you be staying? With whom? How did you know about the camp? Did you take part in protests in the camp or outside? Do you know any suspicious persons there? Etc., etc. Finally, he printed off my permit and gave it to me. I took it and was about to leave his office when I saw that the permit was valid until the 13th of September, a one-day permit. So this research was for her dissertation. All right, one day is not sufficient, right? Was not the plan, was not what had been prearranged, right? She had done everything right, as she talked about. She had made all the plans, and yet still she was faced with then this sudden change. And so she continues on to then explain what she did and how she found a new way and how she did pivot and how she continued to look for ways and continues to look for ways to engage the community and to have their voice be heard and valued, even though it couldn't be done in this other way. Then from Chamika Onyezi-Jo, Learning from Research Settings, she includes a picture of a busy marketplace. She says, at the onset of the data collection phase, it is expected that researchers already have a research plan that encompasses crucial elements such as the site for data collection, strategies for data gathering, and techniques for data analysis. However, my experiences conducting qualitative research in multicultural contexts have highlighted the fluidity of research and the significance of being adaptable as a researcher to recognize cues and welcome new concepts in our research settings that can enrich our work. An instance of this was evident in my doctoral research when I had to adapt my initial plan following contextual challenges while carrying out fieldwork. So she goes on, she talks about how she was working to hear the experiences of working men in the area and how they kept on not having time. She couldn't locate them. And finally, she ended up talking about this with an advisor, with a local person, with someone who could give some kind of guidance. And they ended up telling her, well, you need to go where they are. Go where they are, such as the in their workplace, in the marketplace. And so she had to shift, and she had to see how she could be, as I talk about, rigidly flexible, and that she brings in what is that to have the goal, right? The goal of here, these are the people that whose voices we've talked about and that are important to be heard and valued and amplified. And how do we get there, right? And it may not be the bridge, the access that we're looking for initially, and perhaps there's another way. And so her willingness then to not know the best and to look forward to finding a new way. So overall, then, the key themes of the book then bring together, and maybe you've heard this and you can feel this throughout: justice-centered research, social justice such as equity, inclusion, diversity, economic justice, ecological and environmental justice, and human and environmental rights, transformative learning, these really meaningful changes in ourselves that affect the way we are everywhere. Vulnerability and awareness and critical self-reflection. And so with this image from Hong Tran, she talks about before and after coming to qualitative research, and that before everything was black and white, and that she had one sense of what it was, and that how her transformation from one discipline in more of kind of the STEM sciences field into qualitative research, suddenly there was a blossoming and something else and nuance, right? No longer black and white, but now these vivid colors. So, and this may look familiar, right? So as we come full circle, so transformative learning and justice-centered practices for ourselves, for research, and for more equitable and inclusive futures, a chance to gently embrace our vulnerabilities, to engage in meaningful interactions, to work to dismantle oppressive systems, and to challenge dominant narratives, to foster inclusive spaces where voices, spaces, and places are valued and heard. So we can find hope for justice-centered research then in our commitment to collaboration, dialogue, and inclusivity, along with flexibility and imagination. As we continue to learn from one another, draw insights from diverse perspectives, and engage with the challenges that lie ahead, we have the opportunity to shape a future that is more just, equitable, and sustainable. The stories shared here, and again, I thank everyone who is involved, serve as beacons of hope, inspiring us to embark on our own transformative journey and to create a ripple effect of positive change in our research practice and the world at large. And so with that, I then invite you again, if you would like, to plant your feet, to sit up straight. I'm going to roll my shoulders back, and just to take a couple breaths. And breathe in, and close your eyes if you'd like, and out. And again. And out. And open your eyes when you're ready. And I'll say thank you, that the stories within this book serve as powerful reminders that justice-centered research is not a solitary endeavor. It requires collaboration, empathy, and a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of social, economic, and environmental directions and global rights. And y'all are a part of this. And I'm so grateful for y'all being here. And again, to AQRA, I look forward to connecting. I have here, if you're on LinkedIn, connect there. That's always a great space where you can find me in all other kinds of ways. And if anyone wants to expand their work and want to try writing a book review, for instance, there's also a link there that you can request a copy with the idea that you could then publish somewhere, whether you like the book or not, that doesn't matter. It's about then that the critical perspective and being able to think and learn and then share with others. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anna, for such a wonderful presentation. And I love how you ground your presentation at the beginning, at the end, with a moment of pause and meditation and reflection. It just puts our mind into a peaceful mode, the right mode to absorb all this knowledge that you have imparted to us. So thank you very much for your time and your expertise. Now I would like to open for question and answer. If there are any questions, you can write or you can unmute yourself. Before any questions pop up, I also have an inquiry. So, Dr. Anna, I love how you began today's colloquia with a question and concern about social justice, and that as researchers, we have that power and the opportunity to change lives and transform community. And I do believe and completely agree with you that as scholars, researchers, educators, and lifelong learners, we are so privileged. Yet, I feel that many among us in our surrounding community still have yet to experience this privilege. And many have not had the time to even pause and reflect and to know who they are and to get to know what is it that they want to do in life. So my question is, if you look back and reflect at the process of compiling this book, what are some practical tips that you can give us that can help empower others who are still feeling lost and bonded?
Thank you so much for your question, Natasha. So practical tips to empower people who feel like would you repeat that last part?
Who are still feeling lost and who have not learned to reflect and know themselves, or they still feel bonded.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the tips, if anyone here is feeling that, then you're on a great path. You came today. You came today and you listened, and that's the first step, right? Because if we felt like we already knew everything, there's no reason to attend. There's no reason to listen. And so if we open that door, right? Just the slightest bit. So then that's it, right? The opening the door, opening the window, right? Whichever, your metaphor that, maybe there's something there, right? Maybe there's something else I can learn, right? And then if we're there, then maybe you can think, maybe there's something about me that I might want to understand more of. Right. So it can start from a very, very self-centered space, right? Like, so even if oh, okay, I'm great. Okay, good. Go with that. So tell me more about that, right? Why do you think you're great? Why is it, how are you great? And in what contexts, and who can connect with you and why, right? So if we continue to ask the why, and then go deeper, well, okay, so social justice isn't important. Why? Well, because not everyone's equal. Why is that important for people to be equal? Because, okay, so start answering so everyone can be heard. Well, why is that important to me? Keep on asking your why until you get down to a fundamental kernel, right? And with that, then that can be a driving light, right? And I know that you all have that driving light, and I look forward to hearing about it. If you want help, reach out, right? There's right now 75 people here, right? That we all care about these topics. And so that's so I'd say, so ask your why, congratulate yourself on already beginning the process, and reach out.
Tasha, I think Dr. King is raising a hand.
Yes,
Dr.
I was
King,
about
can
to
you
say
show your
Dr.
video?
King Costa is raising your hand. Dr. King, you can unmute yourself. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Anna, for answering that question.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a wonderful presentation, Dr. Prof. Cohen Miller. I just loved it. And as you were presenting, and particularly when you are addressing the issue of positionality, and I just reflected back here in South Africa, what I see with our students, postgraduate students, the issue of that reflection and positionality itself. There is a little bit of a gray area there. And when it goes to what extent, to how much must this critical reflection actually appear in their writing, and to what extent, and okay, how did it inform them and change them from when they started their research to when they complete their dissertations? There is a little bit of gray area there. And that is an area that really needs to be understood a lot. So I found that interesting. I know there's also one some of our doctoral students, I see them here in the call. Perhaps they would also like to comment as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. King.
Yeah. Tasha, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Anna. You know, I was looking at the first theme. You concluded with the themes of your book, right? And the first one, it was embracing vulnerabilities. I suppose when you embrace your conjecture is, if you embrace vulnerabilities, you'll grow, I suppose. What about the idea that actually we grow by eliminating our vulnerabilities? How do you reconcile those? Are we supposed to embrace our vulnerabilities, or are we trying to, work to reduce or eliminate our vulnerabilities?
Very interesting question, David. Yeah, I haven't had that question before, but what it makes me think of is actually of raising kids, right? That, so the vulnerability, or another way, I think for them, so my kids are 9 and 13 now, that they may not use that word, that they would talk about fear, right? They're scared to do whatever that thing is, or to talk to a certain person, or to try something out. And the fear is normal. That's what I tell them. Vulnerability is normal. And if you remove fear, that's actually, if you remove all fear, that's a problem, right? Then, the kid runs out into the street. They're not aware of the car that comes by, right? You want to have some reasonable fear, right? Or awareness. And same thing, then the vulnerability, where I can see that then is a chance to move through fear, to see it. Okay, so I see who I am. I see that I have this fear, right? I am scared to try this new thing. I had some fear, before coming and speaking with y'all, right? Today, this is a big space. What are y'all going to want to hear? Can I be who y'all are expecting, right? And then being able to share about that, that's then where I can say, okay, I'm getting to acknowledge where I am, and I'm getting to acknowledge it now then with y'all, and that maybe somebody else hearing that, okay, yes, I've written a book and I'm speaking, and yet I still have fear because it's still normal. And by being vulnerable, by sharing it, it then means that I'm not trying to be without it, right? That there's you have stage actors, right? Or, people who perform in different kinds of ways. And they say that tension is important for them and their vulnerability is important to get them prepared. Otherwise, they're just like super like too relaxed, right? That like no energy. And so the vulnerability, so in this way, then so for research and being vulnerable can then mean that we acknowledge that we don't know everything. And I will never know everything. And I'm, so we can say that, I'm not perfect. So drawing from, kind of a self-help world, right? I'm not perfect, but I'm perfectly imperfect. Same thing with all of you, right? That we could say, that if you want to apply it, you're perfectly imperfect, right? And we're on this journey then. And if we recognize that that is a vulnerability, that we're on the journey, and if it's important, to it may be important for some of you. So if David, if the idea of removing the vulnerability, if that's a framework that works for you, albeit use that, right? Then that's, like I've heard you and I know your care and your interest and your growth. And so it's clear that, from an outsider's perspective, that whatever terminology you put on it, right, that it works for you, right? And maybe you don't even, some people might not even like the word vulnerable, right? Fine, don't use it, right? You can use a different word, right? This is about, learning to grow and to work with others and spaces and recognizing that together that things can become better and more nourished and guided together in our qualitative research and in our world in general, right? That the two are intimately mixed.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anna. What I gained from this presentation is that even from the question and answer of how you've answered this question is that the importance of humility while we are doing research, and that humility and the humbleness that comes out of trying to understand where we can learn more and to embrace our curiosity. And if we have vulnerability, we embrace it, then we grow to become better people. Not perfect people, but people who, despite our imperfections, we can still make change and empower people around us. And so thank you. It was such a wonderful, empowering, and I think beautiful presentation that you have shared with us today. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I know that you say, like your mentors say, you don't like the word expert, but just by showing us an example, you are giving us an inspiration of how we can aim to become better, humble, researcher. And for that, thank you very much. So I will move on now to reading the certificate of appreciation. Dr. David, if you can flash that on the screen, like to read the certificate of appreciation grant.
Wait, Tasha.
Yes.
Is it showing somewhere?
No, it's a blank screen now.
Oh, there it is.
There you go. So this is a certificate of recognition awarded to Dr. Anna Cohen Miller for her invaluable contribution as a resource speaker for today's colloquium, given on December 12, 2024, signed by Dr. Pavel Zubkov and by myself. Thank you very much, Dr. Anna, for your time. And for everyone who has attended